What's up, guys? Josh Lau here at TheCardGuyz, and today we're going to be talking about the brand new equipment set for Olympia from the Super Slam set. So, as you can see right here, we have Golden Galea, Golden Heart Plate, Golden Gauntlets, and Golden Gate. They all basically do the same thing. They're a legendary Olympia specialization, and it says this counts as gold, and it has temper 2. So, I'm kind of joking when I put your $2,000 deck is now 2,100, but I'm not really joking because I think the most competitive way to play Olympia is probably playing DGA. So, but anyways, let's get into this equipment set. So basically, what this does is it gives you your first Visit the Golden Anvil re-equip for free. So in the past, you used to have to work for your gold. You had to, use your prize Galea to generate some gold. You had to play a Hold'em or an Edge Ahead and win some gold that way. Hold quite a few cards, play and up the ante, and then basically win some gold that way as well. So it would take a couple turns to generate enough gold, and then you would either need to give go again to your, if you're dual wielding, you would give go again to your second attack or use bolters or something like that, and then play Golden Anvil, or you would take a whole turn off and then re-equip your stuff. That is generally how it was in the past. Now, with the Golden Armor set, you basically have the equipment ready to go to pay for the Golden Anvil. So basically, you just get to block with all your temper equipment once, and then cash it in. If you really need to block for the second time, you can, because Olympia still generates gold. But generally, you're just going to block for 8 and then play Golden Anvil. Now, when you first look at that, you're like, okay, well, you get 8 extra life. Well, not exactly. You don't quite get 8 extra life. You get closer to 4 because you have to spend an action point, which is roughly 1 value, and then instead of blocking with Visit the Golden Anvil, you played it. So that's another 3 value. So basically, Olympia got errata to say 44 life instead of 40. Is that significant? It's a good boost, of course, but there are some downsides to this. It's not just free. I put free in quotes here. Because you only run 3 copies of Golden Anvil, potentially run less, depending on how many re-equips you want. You need to prime your armor for the possibility that you draw Golden Anvil. So that means you generally have to block a little bit earlier. Now, in general, I've always said for Warrior, you want to block with your armor later in the game, because that means for the whole game, your opponent has had to play around the fact that you have armor. So that there are certain play lines that people don't take because you have blocking equipment, right? Nourishing Emptiness. Cards like Snatch, for example, become less relevant. There's, it gets around Dominate, doesn't give Reprise, stuff like that. So because you have to block earlier with your equipment now, you might get into a situation where you really wish you hadn't. So it is what it is. Also, because you have the golden equipment as your equipment set until you re-equip with Visit the Golden Anvil into your standard Olympia set, you can't use the abilities of the armor that you would normally have prior to this equipment set. So things like Prize Galea, you aren't going to have that until you re-equip. You aren't going to have Courage of Blade Hold. You're not going to have Grains of Blood Spill, Iron Song Versus, Brave Forge Bracers, Dynamos, Quick Dodge Flexors, etc. So you're going to get those abilities eventually, but there will be several turns where you don't have those. So yeah. All right, let's take a look at what a equipment set for DGA would look like. So if you're playing Olympia, you are either playing DGA or you are playing some dual wield version, probably Sabers. So if you're running the Decimator Great Axe version, you would be loading out in a full golden armor set, and then you would be re-equipping into the standard DGA set, which would be Prize Galea, Grains of Bloodspill, Brave Forge Bracers, and Quick Dodge Flexors. And basically, you would block for 8, and then you would block with 3 or 4 of your cards, and then you would re-equip, and then go on from there and play a very grindy defensive style. And you would, I'm going to talk soon or in one of the later slides about whether you re-equip once or twice, but you probably aren't going to re-equip again because DGA decks like to run Arcane Barrier, and they like to run D-Reacts, and they like to fat deck a little bit, so you likely don't have the sideboard slots to re-equip twice. So this is how you would generally do it if you're playing a DGA deck. If you're playing as a Sabres deck, this is how it would look like. You probably don't load out with the full golden loadout because Valiant Dynamos is very likely to get some extra value, and you don't need X equals 4 when you play Visit the Golden Anvil. So you would load out with 3 in Dynamos, and then you would re-equip into Galea, Ironsong versus Encourage a Bladehold, and kind of play, that mid-range dual-wield style that we've all come to know and love. So that's basically how you would do it for both of those. So basically, when you have... So one of the things about Olympia is that he doesn't get magically 85 or 90 cards to work with. He's still constrained by the 80. And basically, if you are re-equipping once, you are running at least, if you're running DGA, that's 9 slots. If you're running Sabres, that's 10 slots. That's not including any Arcane Barrier. That's not including any of your sideboard cards. So basically, Olympia decks have to be extremely streamlined. Their main deck is probably going to be close to 60. I would guess like 54, 57 main board cards, and a tiny bit of flexibility in the sideboard. Especially if you're double re-equipping, then you're up to 13 or 14 equipment slots, and we're getting into like the the level of like, for those of you guys that play Bolton sometimes runs 12, 13, 14 equipments, and that gets kind of ridiculous, and your main board has to be extremely streamlined at that point. So basically because you have to re-equip things from the sideboard, not from a magical zone that doesn't exist, you probably are just going to re-equip once. If you re-equip twice, that is possible, but you are either cutting Arcane Barrier, or you're cutting some of those silver bullet cards like Snag, Arcane Compliance, or you're just running less D-Reacts, which is generally not what DGA Control or mid-range Sabres wants to do anyway. They want to play very defensive in general. So not to mention that it is very difficult to generate gold, a substantial amount of gold, which you would have to do for 2 re-equips, without Prize Galea in your starting zone. That is actually how you kickstart a lot of your gold generation. So basically, how it generally goes is you win a wager with Prize Galea, then you win a wager with Hold'em or Edge Ahead or something like that, and then you have 3 gold. Or you win a wager with Galea, and then either on the same turn or later, you win a wager with Up the Ante, and that generates you 3 or 4 gold. And basically, not having the Galea does make things a little bit weird, because you basically have to not block, which is not really what you want to do. And yeah, it's just kind of odd. All right, let's wrap things up, because there's not that it's not this equipment says not rocket science. You're basically getting 4 effective life versus most decks. Obviously, if you're playing against a wizard, you might actually, depending on the wizard. I mean, against Canaan, you're probably not. You're obviously not loading out with your golden equipment. But against some wizards, you're going to just run that and maybe switch into Arcane Barrier, or just run pure AB0 basically against Cecilio, stuff like that. So against most decks, this is going to be an effective buff of 4 life. There are some constraints in terms of when you have to block, but it's okay. You do miss out on some of the activated abilities or passive abilities of the original equipment set, but eventually, once you re-equip, you're going to get it. It might take a little bit of time to find this card. Now, if you're going to run 3 of them, you'll likely see it by turn 7, turn 8. But there are situations where you could have all 3 of them very far down in the deck, and it might make things a little bit awkward. But nonetheless, I think this is going to be a staple equipment set for Olympia going forward. This is to say, though, I still think that this is very similar to when they originally gave Teklovos a bunch of equipment, or they gave Assassin a bunch of equipment. Okay, I mean, it's nice, but there's still a fundamental lack of a gold payoff. I also think he would benefit greatly from having a designed weapon for him, or a signature weapon. That's something that he needs pretty badly. And he still isn't quite a complete hero, but this is a good first step for him. And I'll still have a lot of fun piloting Saber's Olympia. So, yeah. Good cards. They look beautiful. I'm going to pick up a Marvel set, and it'll be nice to put them out in the zones. All right, this has been Josh Lau with the Card Guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey man, did you get the KO deck for Worlds? No one's doing that, okay? Like,
Courage to play whole horse now. Don't kill him. Get greedy. You're doing it too. Alright. Put him in the middle for now. I like it. That's perfect. Alright, next year.
RTN champion.
Yeah, we're gonna have to order a couple more.
Thanks for watching the video.
Here's some more Card Guys videos you might enjoy.